Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. I hope you are well. Have some new additions. We got Jim Rogers' book over there, Adventure Capitalist. We have our new kind of mascot guy there, the Atlas Shrugged dude. We finally got him in, and we should be getting a new camera today, a new audio equipment in the middle of this week. So we're super excited. But let's go ahead and dive into the latest news. We got a bunch of really awesome stories for you today. Well, I don't know about awesome stories, but we've got some stories that you need to know about. I think it's a better way to say it. So let's dive in here. First thing on CNBC's website, we have a story. Dr. Scott Gottlieb, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, sees medicines for kids as a key to turning the tide in the cerveza sickness ordeal, we'll call it. And before I go any further, I want to be very clear. I'm not anti-medicine at all. I just am anti-government mandate. I'm anti-mandates. That's what I'm all about. That's my core argument. And one of the things that I do on social media and on this YouTube channel is I try to point out the hypocrisy, the contradictions from the institutions that we are supposed to have full faith in, to show that I believe, and I think the evidence is crystal clear if you scratch beneath the surface, that these mandates have nothing to do with health. They have nothing to do with protecting you or your kids or your family members or anything like that. They only have to do with either power, the ability to use coercion, maybe now and maybe more so in the future. I think they're boiling the frog slowly. It has to do with control. It has to do with micromanaging your life. And it has to do with these politicians who I think are puppets and useful idiots, never letting a good crisis go to waste. And this article is not me saying that I'm anti-medicine or pro-medicine or anything. It's just simply pointing out what I think are the obvious truths, that anything that they are, the people in charge, the central planners, the quote unquote professionals that the mainstream media likes to quote, and they like to interview, and they like to put up on a pedestal as though they're holier than thou. All of these individuals have ulterior motives. And that's what I really want to point out specifically in this video. So let's move on here. Key points. Medicine with children against cerveza sickness is a crucial step in changing the way many Americans view the cerveza sickness going forward, according to, we'll call him Dr. Scott, told CNBC Monday. Once adults are able to get the medicine for their kids' anxiety about an infection, I think it's going to start to resolve. The former FDA chief, I want to make that point, former FDA chief said. However, he said it's a slow evolution. So I want to first of all point out that this gentleman, who now serves on the board of Pfizer, who, by the way, is a corporate partner of the World Economic Forum. So he might have an incentive there to maybe try to spin what's going on. And that spin may result in, I don't know, maybe some more of the medicine being sold. Yeah, probably. And I'm not saying they're doing that, but I'm saying let's look at the incentives here. What was the Charlie Munger quote? You show me the incentives and I'll show you the results. Something like that, Josh. Josh, look that one up for me real quick. I think that's what it was. Josh will look it up. But anyway, let's move forward with this article. So Dr. Scott told, and Dr. Scott, now I'm going back to Star Trek. That's probably where I got that. That's probably why it came from my subconscious. Anyway, okay, told CNBC on Monday he believes that children getting medicine against the cerveza sickness, crucial step. Okay, we got that. I think the reason why a lot of people are overestimating, yes, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Very good. Thanks, Josh. I think the reason why a lot of people are overestimating the risks of the cerveza sickness are still worried about it, even if they have the medicine, is because kids are vulnerable. And this is according to Dr. Scott. Once adults are able to get the medicine for their kids, though, I mean, now the anxiety should be zero because there's no risk to them. There's no risk to their kids. And right now they're just petrified that they are going to bring the cerveza sickness back to the house. And I'm paraphrasing his quote. But I think first and foremost, this illustrates just the massive disconnect between just normal, everyday people, the average Joe and Jane that you guys talk to, that you are one of, we're all one of. And it shows the discrepancy and the disconnect and how out of touch these global elite actually are with just normal people. And that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, assuming that he's not saying this just to create some sort of spin to shed a light that is attractive on the medicines so Pfizer can make more profit. But giving him the benefit of the doubt here, how does this make any sense? I mean, out of the people that you know, people on this live stream right now, how many parents are just petrified to bring the cerveza sickness back home to their kids? I I know a lot of my friends have kids, and they run the gamut of the political spectrum, and I don't know any of them. And I've gone over their house. None of them are behaving in this manner. Now, it may be on the back of their mind, but none of them are saying, you know what, George, I'm sorry. I would love to go play golf this weekend, but I can't because my 3-year-old doesn't have the medicine, and I'm just paranoid that I'm going to somehow have a breakthrough infection and that my 3-year-old is going to get the cerveza sickness. I have yet to have that conversation, again, with anyone, regardless of whether their political leanings are on the left and the right. I'd love to get your feedback on the live chat as to whether or not you've had that type of conversation. My guess is you probably have not. Let's move on here. So again, my point is to go to these our mandarins here, our overlords, our health overlords, and to have them make decisions based on their view of how the average Joe is behaving, I think is utter nonsense because they have no clue. There's just this huge disconnect. Like I said, they don't understand the how the average Joe and Jane really views what is going on in the real world. So now he's stressing that simply that adults getting the medicine is not enough for psychological transition. And it's shocker, surprising that he would say that, being that he's on the board for Pfizer. He continues, it's going to be when we can get all the children the medicine, when the prevalence declines, when the hospitalizations and death start to decline, and they will. Okay, wrong. That is just outright 100% unequivocally wrong. And by the way, this article is talking about how they're now, I believe the FDA is coming out and potentially approving the medicine for kids ages 5 to 11. And they're trying to really push this before Halloween. But let's just take a look at what Dr. Scott is saying here. He's saying the prevalence of declines of the cerveza sickness and the hospitalizations and the deaths start to decline he's saying that will happen to a significant degree if 5 to 11-year-olds get the medicine. Okay, let's just, this would assume that these children are, assumes a couple things. Number one, that they are spreading the cerveza sickness to a great degree. And number two, that if they get the medicine, they will stop spreading the cerveza sickness. And we know the latter, based on Walensky and the CDC, is not true, if you're going to believe what she says. This, what we call a viral load, is the exact same with this recent variant. And it's, so this statement is unequivocally false when you look at it from the standpoint of adults and kids. But when you're looking at it just from the standpoint of kids, it really becomes utter nonsense when you look at the actual numbers of kids that are truly affected to a great degree from the cerveza sickness. And one, so let me back up what I'm saying with some stats from the Mayo Clinic. Okay, while all children are capable of getting the cerveza sickness, they don't become sick as often as adults. Most, let's get that word, most children have mild or no symptoms. None. That would mean zero. Most. And you can see this reflected in the number of deaths. You're going to the CDC website. When we look at 0 to 17, and I would love to see these numbers broken down by 5 to 11, by the way, but 0 to 17, these are total deaths for the entirety, going all the way back to March 2020, 464. Now, I'm not saying that that's a trivial number. That's 464 more than all of us would have liked. But to sit there and say that this is going to be a dramatic, to sit there and say that by getting 5 to 11-year-olds the medicine is going to dramatically change the trajectory of what we're dealing with the cerveza sickness is ludicrous. And I would also like to point out that in this, you'll notice that it's not all deaths as a result of the cerveza sickness. It's all deaths involving. Those are two very, 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 very different words. Involving would mean that you have the cerveza sickness when you passed away. It doesn't necessarily mean that the cerveza sickness was the catalyst or the reason that you passed away. So I would like them to dive into those numbers more extensively as well. But let's go back to the article. And I wanted to point out here that, of course, Biden is coming out today and saying refusal to get the medicine has cost all of us. And once again, he is not breaking that down into those individuals who have the exact same benefits as to those who've gotten the medicine by actually having the cerveza sickness in the past. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm not saying you should just say, oh, screw the medicine. I'm just going to go ahead and roll the dice with the cerveza sickness. For some people, maybe that's a better option. For some people, maybe it's not. It's all based on your individual risk reward, but it's a decision that you should be able to make. It's not a decision the government should make for you. And that's my main point here. But the simple fact that he's saying that refusal to get the medicine and lumping in people who have natural immunity and saying that they are also costing us all is, again, it's an outright lie. It's a lie. And if he's willing to lie to you about this, how can you trust him about anything else that's this important? And my answer is you can't. And what this shows you, if he's not willing to go into the nuance, like they are in Europe, like they are in Israel. I mean, I don't like what they're doing over there as far as the passports and whatnot, but at least they're willing to acknowledge the quote unquote science. And for some reason here in the United States, our politicians are not, nor is the mainstream media. And they're gradually coming around there, the media, which is good. But for the most part, they haven't done that. And so then the question becomes why? I think it goes right back to us interviewing Dr. Scott and him being on the board of Pfizer. I mean, is it that hard to connect these dots here at the end of the day? So here at the bottom, CNBC has a disclosure statement. Dr. Scott is a CNBC contributor and is a member of the boards of Pfizer, also genetic testing startup Tempus, healthcare tech company Action, looks like, and biotech company Illumina. He also serves as a co-chair of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings and Royal Caribbean's quote-unquote healthy sail panel. So let's dive into this just slightly here, because I think this is important. When I was an entrepreneur, one of the things that I was advised to do, which I never did, but is when I set up a company, and there was one company in particular, the people that, and I won't go into great detail here, but people were advising me to set up this board of advisors, right? And so they said, this is the way, and these were private equity guys that have a lot of experience in business and in startups. They say, well, we want this board of advisors because it's a great PR tactic. So let's say I was setting up a YouTube channel, or I was setting up like Rebel Capitalist Pro, or I was setting up Rebel Capitalist Live, or something like that. You know, I was setting up a business like this that was revolving around macroeconomics. And I said, it's not just me setting these things up, or it's not just the speakers, but oh, no. We have a board of advisors. And our board of advisors includes Ben Bernanke. And our board of advisors includes Alan Greenspan. And obviously for Rebel Capitals, that probably wouldn't be too good, but I'm just using that as an example so you guys get what I'm saying. And or our board of advisors includes this global elite person, just fill in the blank, or this person who was high up at the Fed, or this person who has been on CNBC a lot that you would recognize, Kevin O'Leary as an example. And the reason you do that is twofold. Number one, for PR, but number two, in case you ever get sued, then you can come back and say, oh, no. We did everything that we possibly could. I mean, look at our board of advisors. I've got Alan Greenspan, for heaven's sakes, on my board of advisors. I did everything I could to educate the public, let's just say, or whatever it was, right? And so whenever you see Norwegian Cruise Lines or Royal Caribbean setting up a healthy sail panel, trust me, it has nothing to do with your health. Zero, nada, zilch. It has everything to do with their liability and PR. So then they go to Dr. Scott, who's got some clout because he was head of the FDA, and they say, you know what, Dr. Scott, we'll pay you $1 million a year if you are on our healthy sail panel. And Dr. Scott says, yeah, I'll take advantage of my connections. I'll take advantage of my political connections. I'll take, I'm here just to make money, for heaven's sakes. What do you want me to say? Pfizer? Oh, you want me to say that we should get the medicine for 5 to 11-year-olds and that's going to cure all of our woes as far as the psoriasis sickness? Done. Easy. CNBC, book me an interview. I'm a contributor. I've got something to say. And it's the exact same thing with Royal Caribbean's health panel. And the same thing with Norwegian Cruise Lines. You guys have to understand that this is not about your health. This is about power. It's about control. And in this case, it's either just about profits or it's about PR or deferring liability. That's all this is, or reducing liability. So now let's continue to move on. And when you look at the statistics, this is what becomes very alarming and further proof that they're just using this as a spin in order to get you to believe something that may or may not be true. Again, it goes back to their intentions. That's what I want to focus on. I'm not here to say that the medicine is bad and that you shouldn't do it. I'm not going to play that game. There's different risk reward for everyone. And the fact that they don't go into that nuance shows you that they have an ulterior motive. So look at this. When we go back to the Mayo Clinic's website, we see that there are side effects, or could be side effects, for younger people who get the medicine. So the first thing is, whenever you see a group come out and say, oh, this is quote unquote safe. Really? Well, how are you defining safe? Are you saying that does safe mean that it's absolutely impossible to have a side effect, a negative side effect? Is it absolutely impossible to for someone to have some sort of allergic reaction, and for a young person to have some sort of heart condition that may lead to death as a result of? Is that impossible? Because to me, that would mean safe, right? But that's not how they're defining safe. You see, they're defining safe as, oh, it's just, it's just better to get the medicine. Okay, well, hey, let's give these statistics to parents so they can actually make a decision, an individual decision, based on the risks and the rewards, instead of just coming out and saying, and basically saying, oh, there's no risk whatsoever, it's all upside, so why not do it? That's pretty much the narrative that you hear from the mainstream media and people like Dr. Scott. But we see that, and again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider this for your kid. You do what you think is right based on the data that you have at your disposal. But make sure you do the research and make sure that you're using critical thinking here. But we see that there are potential side effects here. And ironically enough, these potential side effects, of course, just the way the medicine works, is very similar to actually getting the cerveza sickness. Then we go down and we see that there are some other things here that parents should consider. In the US, there's been an increase in reported cases in myocarditis after certain medicines, particularly in male, adolescent, young adults, age 16 and older. So will we see this in 5 to 11-year-olds? Maybe. But where's the threshold in the sand where if we see enough of it, now all of a sudden it's unsafe or it's not safe? You see, that's what they're not defining here. So that's another thing that, in my opinion, should make you incredibly suspicious of the people that a lot of Americans are trusting implicitly. So we look at this and we know that there is a potential risk here. And it's being sold to us as though there is zero risk and that there is only upside. Okay, we've defined that there is a risk. Now let's go ahead and go back to that potential upside. Well, that takes us back to the original thing here and saying that, okay, with kids, they have most. And again, we should define what most is on both sides. We really need to be more clear about how they're defining most, right? Children have mild or no symptoms. Okay, no symptoms, great. Now we're defining what that is, right? But what percentage? Let's figure this out here. right? Because without that, it's just very ambiguous. And we're really just it boils down to parents making decision based on feelings and based on just their political leanings and whether or not they watch CNN or they watch Fox News. And regardless of your political spectrum, you shouldn't be making decisions based on that. You should be making decisions based on hard data, right? So the main takeaway here, and then I could go back to the death rate, and it's obviously another number that parents should consider. And I understand that there is potential for longer term side effects from the cerveza sickness, but you've got to consider all things. There's also a potential for longer term side effects with the medicine. And I get a lot of pushback on that, where people just say, "Oh, George, you're crazy because there is, we've had millions, 300 million of the medicines go out, and we can tell now that they're very, very safe and there's no long-term side effect." Well, how can you determine that? Well, because there's never been any side effects for any other medicine, so why would there be a side effect to this one? That's the extent of their argument. To me, that's not a very good argument. So here's another example I'll give of that. And this is from the Mayo Clinic's website. Is there any reason or any research on long-term effects of Pfizer, the group that Dr. Scott could potentially be a shill for, to put it bluntly, because the medicine clinical trials only started in the summer of 2020. It's not yet clear if the medicine will have long-term side effects. However, and here's what they always come back with: medicines rarely cause long-term side effects. Okay, but again, that's like saying that we shouldn't have to worry about the safety features for the new model of Volvo or something like that, because all the other Volvos that preceded it, well, they were safe, so obviously this one's going to be safe. I mean, no, let's that's not critical thinking. We need to see the statistics, and if we don't have the statistics, then yes, okay, you can assume there's a higher probability that we won't have any long-term side effects, and I hope that is true. But the probability is not zero. And again, this is something that parents should consider. And it's why I go back to what I'm really pushing for, and that's that we should not have government mandates. This should be an individual decision. And if I were to read further in this Mayo Clinic post, it goes on to say that even within kids, the risk is far, far different. If you've got a kid that's 100 pounds overweight, right, their risk profile is way different from a kid that's on their swim team or something like that, or runs 5 miles a day, or is extremely athletic or very healthy. In other words, if you've got a kid that is diabetic or has any of these other health issues, they're in a completely different risk category. Therefore, the risk reward of getting the medicine is completely different. You see, and the fact that Dr. Scott, that Biden, and the institutions that we are supposed to put our full faith in, the fact that they're not getting into that level of nuance tells you that this isn't about health. It's either about control, it's about power, it's about micromanaging your life, or it's just about good old-fashioned profits and big pharma just trying to buy out all of the politicians and useful idiots that they possibly can. Or it goes back to these corporations, not only maybe even foregoing some profits to look better in the eyes of the general public, or to prevent or to reduce long-term liability. That's my message. And that's why we all need to use critical thinking in these times when the government is expanding at an exponential rate and taking away your freedom and liberty and your right to choose what goes into your kid's body, for heaven's sakes. I mean, that's what it boils down to. But that's the message. Critical thinking. Let's look at the contradictions that these politicians are making. Let's look at how they're just blatantly lying to you. And then let's look at how they're avoiding nuanced decisions, because this is proof that what they're saying has nothing to do with health at the end of the day.